All right, folks, welcome back. This is Yankees Unloaded. Quick hitter for you. We're talking about Jonathan Loaisiga, who, Gary, unfortunately, he might be done as a Yankee. If he doesn't come back from this injury, he is at the end of his rope as far as contract is concerned. He's in arbitration 3, which means he'll be a free agent in 2025. Let's start off with the obvious. Do you think Loaisiga comes back this year?
Well, this is the crazy thing about relievers is when you're talking about those big inning guys, and we really started to see that with Andrew Miller. We saw that in Cleveland. They were using him up, just milking him like a cow. Well, they're not the only organization that did the same thing. The Yankees have done that. We did that with our Super Bowl pin a few years ago. Jonathan Loaisiga, and now we're dating this back to 2021. He threw 70 and 2/3 innings. Okay, so that's a very valuable asset. We're talking about a guy whose FIP was 2.58. So this is a very good player. And the following year, he threw 48 innings. Obviously, he was dealing with something, didn't pitch to the same capacity. But you're talking about since then, 2023 and now entering 2024, he's thrown 21 innings since the beginning of 2023. He's got all the stuff that you want. But when you're talking about an asset that just cannot stay on the field, and whether that's the way he throws the ball, whether it's his stuff and his body can't handle it, who knows, right? We all have our hypothesis as to why certain players can't stay healthy. But for as far as the New York Yankees go, the Yankees are in a win now position. And anytime you feel like there's a player who cannot stay healthy, it's hard to envision them in the future. So I hesitate to even say that the Yankees are going to look at him and say, yeah, 2025, we picture to see Low out there. I don't know. And to be fair, he was just put on the 60-day IL, and it was a lat strain, I'm pretty sure. So those usually don't end well. Okay. The lat strains most often tend to lead to other types of issues, such as Tommy John. We've heard the same, very similar things when it comes to forearm tightness. We heard that with Kershaw. They shut him down for a really long time.
So it was like an arm flexor.
An arm flexor. It can't be good. And given his history, it's bad. And I don't like to guess when it comes to medicals, because you can't do that.
But based on recent history doesn't mean 60 days he'll be back. And I think we need to let people know that.
Yes.
That's why I think we're even asking the question, hey, is he done? Because there's a chance he's done with the Yankees.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we saw this with Luis Severino. It was actually at that game where he gave up like 3 straight home runs to the Reds. And you could just see it. That was like the end. That was the beginning of the end for him, in the Bronx. But look, obviously talking about whether or not he comes back. Now let's pivot. Who replaces him? Because I think, we could talk about, the guys right now on the roster, right? Nick Birdie, Jake Cousins, Caleb Ferguson, Victor Gonzalez, Ian Hamilton, Clay Holmes, Dennis Santana, and Luke Weaver. That's their bullpen right now, Gary.
That's right.
I mean, they added Dennis Santana as a corresponding move to this. That doesn't mean Dennis Santana is going to replace him. I think they like Dennis Santana's stuff, and I like Santana's stuff. I just think that at the end of the day, Santana is not a more than one inning pitcher, and I think he got tagged for that today. What I look at, Gary, Clayton Beater, we saw 3 pitches he threw. They have Clayton Andrews. They have JT Brubaker on the IL 60, who they traded for while injured. They like his stuff enough to go out and trade for. They have Scott Efros, who they still have plenty of years to control with him, the sidearm pitcher who they got in that trade, getting rid of Wesneski. They even have Yuendrys Gomez, who, obviously was a prospect to be a starting pitcher, could be a bullpen guy. Tommy Kahnle's on the 15-day IL. He's the guy I think that I'm most excited to get back. McKinley Moore is on the IL for 15 days. You also have Cody Morris, Cody Poteet, Ron Marinaccio, and unfortunately Lou Trevino, who's on the 60-day IL. I'm not very high on.
We know you don't like him.
Yeah. These are just guys, Gary, that I mentioned that are on the 40-man roster. So these are not moves you would have to make an additional move for. These guys can come and go as they please. Once they're off the 40-man, like you have to get a spot like freed up essentially. So if
That's
they
right.
were to want to bring on somebody like a Will Warren, for instance, he's not on the 40-man roster. A lot of people don't realize that. So they would have to move one of these guys off of the 40-man roster to get them there. Now, IL guys do not count as 40-man roster guys. They're just listed as such. So those IL guys are not taking up a roster spot. Like, don't be upset. Scott F. Frost and Lou Trevino are not currently taking up a roster spot. But you might be upset because they might do that. And I look back at, remember Miguel Castro, who just pitched against them for the Diamondbacks?
Mm-hmm.
I remember them adding him off of IL late in the season, looking like he was this big thing. And they sent down like Marinaccio or somebody who was pitching well for him. That's where, just because you're getting a guy back doesn't mean he's reinforcements. Just means he's a guy. He could contribute. He might not contribute. Miguel Castro wasn't great when he came back. I look at a guy like Clayton Beeter and I wonder why the hell he got sent down to begin with. But if I'm looking at anybody to replace the velocity that you're losing with Lowe, it's got to be somebody like Tommy Kahnle.
Yeah, and I agree that we want to replace velocity, but at the same time, the thing that I'm concerned with, and we talked about this preseason, we talked about the fact that the Yankees didn't go get out and get a starting pitcher. They weren't as aggressive as we would have liked them to be. Some people said the remedy was Blake Snell. Other times people said it was Burns that obviously ended up going to Baltimore. But having said all that, the Yankees did not do that. The Yankees rolled in with a rotation, obviously Garrett Cole being on the 60-day IL, with Nestor Cortez, Carlos Rodon, Stroman, Schmidt, and Heel. Heel is on a pitch count, so he's not a big inning guy. So you're really talking about a list of 4 players that aren't going to be piling up innings. Our biggest inning guy right now is Marcus Stroman. So having said that, coming into the year, if that's your rotation, we need innings. And those innings have to come from somewhere. They don't come from nowhere. So having said that, I want innings. And Clayton Beeter last year threw 130 innings between AAA and AA. That is big inning. So he knows how to go out there. And we saw with Lowe in 2021 through 70 innings, and it was huge for this team. So if you're talking about how do we replace 70 innings, well, how about a guy who pitched 130 last year? Is pitching in AA and AAA the same thing as the big leagues? No, it's not. But what it means is that physically, Clayton Beeter can do what the job is. And the fact that that's the case, if he's got the arm that they say he has, and the numbers suggest so, then I want him on the roster, and we'll figure out what we got from there.
I just don't know why he's not on the roster. I guess that's kind of my concern. Like, how do you make a move like, again, I have nothing against Dennis Santana, right? But how do you not bring up Clayton Beeter? What I also want to throw out here as we wrap this thing up is something that we've talked about off air. I think we did mention it on air. Isn't it kind of weird? We were just talking about a hypothetical trade to go out and get Emmanuel Clase, and then this happens, which would almost open the door for something like that. Now going out and getting one of those guys actually makes sense. He'd be wicked expensive, but you've told me that's the guy you want, and you'd be willing to give up a pretty penny to do so. Personally, for me, I'd be okay trading for somebody like that because he's got 5 years of control, and he's a 26-year-old, probably best closer in baseball, one of them. I mean, I'd be okay with that, with the caveat I wouldn't give up the top 2. I wouldn't I wouldn't give up Jason Dominguez, and I wouldn't give up Spencer Jones. And I think the rest I'd be okay with. Now, I'm not just going to unload my farm system, because keep in mind the Soto deal. You had the Gallo deal they're still recovering from in a sense, right?
That's right.
They have deals where, that still hurts. Like even the John Birdie deal, like at some point, Cruz could end up being really good for the Marlins. It's why they traded a starting shortstop. We all knew that he was going to be their starter, and they traded him away because they liked the package. You're offered something you like, you take it. So I think it's fair to say that the Yankees could be fairly aggressive because the flexibility they have not going out and making one of those moves early on. They've been linked to Clase in the past. If they were going to go for anybody, like if they were going to spend a big, bunch of money for a reliever, it'd have to be somebody like that. for me to do it.
Yeah, you
And
definitely want leverage because if you just brought up Soto's deal, and this is the last thing I'll say about this because you can't just go make trades if you don't have a backup plan. We always talked about
yeah,
teams don't usually make trades unless they have something to fall back on. And obviously there's crappy organizations out there that don't know what they're doing. They might make those mistakes. But the Yankees usually, like we saw it this year, Hamilton's replacing Michael King, right? That's the very clear decision that
Heels
this team made.
replacing what Johnny Brito would be this year.
That's exactly right. So, having said that, if the Yankees were going to go get involved with Class A, when you're talking about probably a top 2 closer in the game, you're talking about a guy with a 102-mile-an-hour cutter, someone that obviously he would be on anyone's wish list. If Class A becomes available, it's not just the Yankees calling, everyone's calling. Okay. Same
Yeah.
thing with Edwin Diaz. If he becomes available, it wouldn't be just the Yankees trying to, they're not trying to kick the tires. Literally everyone's going to be doing that. So, having said that, the Yankees are not going to deplete their farm system and go get a closer, someone to replace Lowe, and not just replace them, surpass that production if they don't have any assurance on what's happening with Juan Soto, what's happening with Gleyber Torres, what's happening with the rest of these roster decisions. Because once they have that, in my opinion, they can get more aggressive.
So do you think that, like, if they traded for Clase, say today, do you think Juan Soto's pretty much giving them like the thumbs up, like I'm coming back?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess you can never say. I would say that would be Juan Soto per se, because the way Scott Boras works, and I'm fairly certain Soto is a Scott Boras client. Is that Boras doesn't work that way? He's never worked that way with any organization. He essentially tells you, if you want to negotiate with my client, his price is going to be determined in the offseason. And having said that, based on that history with Boras himself, you're not going to go make a deal and have any assurance from Scott Boras that this guy's going to be around. Now, most people can assume Juan Soto is going to be a Yankee next year. I would assume he'd be a Yankee, but
Yeah.
that's because Hal Steinbrenner feels like we can't lose this guy. Just very similar to what you saw at Aaron Judge. So if you basically have to say, am I willing to make the bet that we are going to go get this guy? If the answer is yes, you're going to put your eggs in that basket, there's no reason that you shouldn't get aggressive on the trade market. But if you feel like there's doubt in what's going to happen with Boras and Soto, then maybe you stand pat. So I guess we'll see what they think.
Yeah, I think it's something to keep in mind. As we wrap this thing up, I think, just kind of looking, you at home, if you're watching these games, Toronto's not anybody that I'm looking at like, oh, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, right? But Miami is a really interesting matchup because they're playing like crap. And when they play Miami early next week, they're going to get a chance to see Luzardo. They're going to get a chance to see Edward Cabrera. They're going to get a chance to see Braxton Garrett. And these are guys that I think the Yankees will be scouting. Like, you have, obviously your pro scouts are out there on the road watching these guys, but you're seeing them up close and personal. Like, Aaron Boone could go to Brian Cashman and be like, I need Edward Cabrera. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. So, even just in warmups, just getting a chance to get a feel for how they work and things like that, you can pick up on things. And I just think that's going to be a really interesting series. And then keep in mind, not long after that, they're in Cleveland, and they'll probably see Class A. Probably 2 of those 3 games will be.
I don't want to see him at all.
Yeah, but he's one of those guys that you bring in like a hater. Even when you're not winning, you bring him in, just to get him work early in the year, and I think that's probably what we'll probably see. And so it's just an opportunity to scout these guys. Also an opportunity if they do end up going against Justin Bieber, Shane Bieber, if they get a chance to go up against him, you get a chance to scout him. I don't see them giving up on the guy at the top, whose name is totally escaping me right now, of the rotation. But Bieber is going to be a free agent. So I definitely think they could move him. I guess it really depends on, where Cleveland is. I mean, if they are in the thick of things, I don't think they move anybody. But I mean, if they have a bad year at the deadline, I could see them moving everybody. I could see them moving Jose Ramirez.
Yeah, they've been flirting with trading away guys. Remember, people have been calling on Jose Ramirez for years.
Everyone, and they're a small market team too.
Yes, that at some point, people assume that you're going to break up. You're going to break up the band, but sometimes that organization, and they did it with an extension with Jose Ramirez. Okay, maybe this doesn't break up. So we're just going to have to see. Obviously, wins and losses matter when it comes to the trade market. Right now, Jake's bringing up the fact that Miami is one of those teams that is just playing like absolute booty, and that's true. But they do have some standouts. Jesus Luzardo is a standout. He's already thrown 10 in the third innings, but he's striking out 13. Yeah, he's given up some hits, but the fact that he can miss bats, it's potentially one of those guys that you can buy on the low, put him out in the, you can basically put him out in the bullpen. He can give you big innings. So given what the Yankees lost innings today, not just talent. So I need people to understand that as we approach the trade deadline, because we will be posting videos around the deadline. But even now, we've got to go through half a season without those innings. So where we go from here, I'm going to assume they're going with Clayton Beeter, and I like it. So, but if Clayton Beeter comes out here and he's getting hit, the Yankees at some point have to make a move.
And this did just become a huge opportunity. So,
Yes,
this is the bullpen in a nutshell. So Nick Birdie, step up. Jake Cousins, 4 strikeouts in his debut, step up. I mean, these guys will have an opportunity. Ian Hamilton has his own role. He doesn't replace anybody. He's coming in, throwing 2 2/3, maybe even going 3 innings. He is absolutely dominant. Victor Gonzalez better watch it. You mentioned him. You're not as high on him. Victor Gonzalez better watch it. He could easily get knocked out of this pen. And I think Caleb Ferguson's going to stay. I know people will get on him for giving up the home run. It is what it is. But yeah, that's all I got. I think, it sucks to lose Johnny Lasagna like that. Also, don't forget Ron Marinaccio. I know, he didn't look too great at the end of last year, but Marinaccio has had some really decent innings, has some good stuff there. Look out for Marinaccio as kind of a sleeper to come back, because I think a lot of people were surprised he didn't make the club.
Yeah, they liked him last year, and some people were wondering why that is. But usually the Yankees are set in their ways, so I wouldn't be shocked to see him come back up. But to be honest with you, I'm not really hoping for that. I'm hoping that we get to see a sneak peek of some of our arms in the minor leagues. So if we can do that, why not? Because I mean, to be honest with you, I thought Beeter should have been on the team anyway.
Yeah, well, he made the team, and then he became the first. It was his debut. He became the first in his debut to have a 3-inning save or whatever, or 3-inning first appearance.
That's
since
right.
Mo.
Yeah,
and they're like, goodbye. I don't know, but
thank you for your service.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. Again, there are guys on IL to keep an eye on: JT Brubaker, Scott Efros, Tommy Canley, and Lou Trevino, and McKinley Moore. So we'll keep an eye on that. I mean, just be ready, because trade deadline, we are going to be crazy loaded with content. Gary and I were talking about this before we had a show last year.
And we're literally going to get one of those guys, maybe.
Yeah. But we'll still be crazy with the content. So appreciate you guys as always. Be sure to follow us on our social media below and at Yankees Unloaded on all social media. We'll see you guys in the next video.
And never forget to like this video.